Late last year, Nike dropped the Nike Mind shoe, this revolutionary idea, connecting your mind and your body, improving pre-game performance, all these big, elaborate marketing schemes, scans, scientific looking test results, and meaningless numbers and acronyms and 5.1, all these random things to make it seem like this is one of the most scientific and most innovative shoes that Nike's come out with in years. But then we cut them apart, and not only is it full of a bunch of MPs, they pull out, which for an MP, part of the game, I think, more than anything, for being honest. But more importantly, it just seems like a gimmick through and through. It just seemed like a borderline false advertising, leading their customers astray gimmick. And after cutting it in half, I was like, there's no way that the sneaker version is this basic, this simple, and they're charging this much money and trying to claim so many scientific things, and this is all that's on the inside of the shoe. So we actually bought the Nike Mind 2 to cut in half and run through our test to see, is it better built than this? Is it an actual sneaker? Is there anything behind this? Is it all just one big useless gimmick? Is there any way this actually works, or is it all just a big sham? Because if this sneaker is built the same way as this, I feel like it's even more damn for Nike. What is this shoe? Well, the brand is Nike. The style is the Nike Mind 002. They weigh 10 ounces, which is shockingly light. And this, keep in mind, this is size 7, so the other sizes are a little bit bigger. It's just like, once again, these got bought up by all the bots and all the resellers, and this really simple, like, basically overpriced croc, you have to pay like $300 for. I don't know how people don't hold Nike accountable for all this BS that they're doing with the resale market. So we were lucky and got a size 7 for $145. But if we look at Stonk X, let's see how much they're reselling for. $250. You're basically paying like nearly double for no reason. For a shoe that might be a full-on gimmick, pseudoscience, BS-based gimmick. We'll see. They're made in Vietnam, and the way they position this product is the benefits of Nike Mind technology and a comfortable go-anywhere sneaker. Yeah, we did that. Plush and responsive foam cushions your every step, while large outsole nodes, MPs, what I would call them, push against your foot, engaging sensory areas of the brain to help you stay present and connected with your surroundings everywhere you go. That last sentence is the most important thing, because we're not just gonna see if this shoe's built like the mule, but we're gonna go through some science 101 that Nike should have learned in 5th grade, and somehow they did not apply it to this project. So if you do happen to want a pair of these, good luck. You gotta pay twice the price. But I'll put links in the description either way. So first, let's look at the upper and see, is it the exact same? Is it the same materials? Are they built any different? Well, they are built different because this foam slide is mostly foam. You can see that single layer wraps all the way around and really only have a piece of fabric right there. Whereas the 002s, you've got that same material, at least that's what it looks like, as your entire upper of the shoe without that foam creeping up the sidewalls. Because I don't feel the foam on the inside. Then you do have these really cool little perforations. So it's not just open perforations, there's that orange layer that I think sandwiches between the lining, and it might actually be the lining. Yeah, I think it's sandwiched in between. So the idea would be that water and dirt and grime doesn't get into the inside of the shoe, but it still has these holes to be breathable. And I like the design. I think it's cool. I like the little pop of orange popping through. It's echoed through the outsole and up through here. It's gonna be breathable. It's soft and squishy. It is a sneaker upper, so it's got that going for it. So that alone is different from the mules. But what about even deeper on the inside? Because this was maybe one of the bigger ones. I was like, there's no way that the sneakers are just the little nodes or MPs with a little bit of elastic material just pressing up on your foot all day. There's no way. And on mule, I could kind of excuse it because maybe you're just wearing them around the house. Maybe you're wearing them for your pregame warm-up. But for a sneaker, that seems crazy to me that it's such a simple way to make a sneaker. Maybe it's fine, maybe it's durable. You know, Elliot Page did a longer review and it seemed like they had some issues with the nodes. But the number one thing that I didn't even think about until we started going through the comments of the last video doing some research for this one, everyone's like, how do you get dog out of that? And I'm like, that is actually a really good point. That might be the fundamental flaw of this entire project. Because you have these nodes that push up into your foot, but in order to have those nodes move, you need them to be in a cavity. And that cavity is not filled in with anything other than that little node. And so if you happen to step on a fresh turd, that's just gonna squeeze up into your shoe. And then you've got to somehow power blast that out because you could kind of bend it maybe and try to get in there like that and wash it out. But that's one of the more fundamental flaws that we missed in the first video. And it's clearly not been improved for the 002 because you can see on the inside that it's literally just a strobel stitched board, and then you can see those little nodes pushing up through. Is that a bad thing? Is it gonna be less durable? I think it probably is. Like, I can't imagine it's gonna be nearly as durable as a regular sneaker, especially with all that pressure on the very specific pinpointed areas where that's just gonna slowly push through and wear out. So that alone seems like a really terrible idea. Like, because they could have solved that by maybe adding a layer over top, by making the tolerances a little bit tighter, because that's another issue with these shoes is even though you're stable on the ground, the shoe shifts like quarter of an inch just because of all the movement in the little nodes. But I don't think it's the end of the world. I think it's kind of a gimmicky shoe. It'd be the same thing as looking at like the Nike Scorpions, be like, well, if you step on a nail, they're gonna pop, which is a fair critique of those. And I think we actually made that critique. But nobody's wearing them on construction sites. Nobody's anticipating them to be the most durable shoes. And I think that's kind of how these are. So I don't think it's a huge crime to make these not the most durable shoes. I wish they were more durable, and that's why I wanted to do this video. Was like they gotta have at least an insole in there to kind of give it extra protection. They had to have figured out how to solve like the issue with dirt getting up in there, but they didn't. So if they don't really work as shoes, they're not gonna be the most durable shoes. What are they for? Well, we went to the description. That last line says, while large outsole nodes push against your foot, engaging sensory areas in the brain to help you stay present and connect with your surroundings everywhere you go. So that's one claim, right? So what about the other claims that they make? Other claims that they clearly make in their advertising and on their product pages: a mind-altering shoe. Okay, that's claim number 2. Number 3, activate your senses to enhance your pre-game routine. Number 4, Nike Mind amplifies sensation. It works by engaging the sensory area of your brain via thousands of mechanoreceptors underfoot. And then really the last claim that seems to be across a lot of the marketing and branding is engage your senses with Nike Mind can help you get out of your head, connect with your surroundings, and stay more present in the moment. So that's the claims they're making. They're very, very loose claims. And so what I want to do now is walk you through, like I said, 5th grade Science 101. We're literally going to pull up the scientific method, but I want to show you a little video first. This is on Nike's YouTube channel, Behind the Science. Keep in mind, behind the science, emphasis on science, right?
Anytime I get asked about what's the innovation I'm most excited about, my response is
Okay, Chief Science Officer, PhD, keep that in mind. Okay, this is the principal researcher, and they're saying Nike is the first company to create a team like the Mind Science Department, right? So they're building this thing up. I'm a higher up in the industry. I got my PhD, he's got his PhD, I'm the principal researcher. You know, like they're setting this up like, hey, there's real science. We're the first company to create a team like the Nike Mind Science Department, right? Science, it's all science, right?
Science department. This is a really hardcore set of neuroscientists and perception.
Okay, they're claiming really hardcore scientists, right?
easy to dream, but you have to have the technology, the design, the creativity, and then the ability to scale and build these things.
We wanted to create a new icon.
Okay, this is the VP, Creative Director, Innovation, right? So these are the higher ups. These are the top dogs. You know, these are the guys that are making the big claims. We're pushing everything towards science.
And a new sensation, a new feel.
How do we go beyond just physical performance, but how do we tap into
Okay, this guy is the Program Manager Director. So these are the important guys.
performance in any way?
So now we know who it is. We know the goal. They're trying to make a science department to push innovation, to connect these things. We got all the biggest brains. We got all the technology. We got all the equipment to do science, right? That's like the intro. So let's see what science they came up with. That's a sick logo though, for being honest.
Nike Mind is a new sensory footwear concept that helps reawaken the foot, the body, and the mind.
Okay.
From the early days even of Nike Free, we were trying to understand how do we not just unlock movement, but unlock sensation in the mind.
Okay, so they're making claims like, we're trying to awaken things. So very loose terms. There's not like, we're trying to improve this. We're trying to make this twice this. It's just like, we're trying to connect. We're trying to do this. There's no science that's happened yet. There's no scientific claims.
Body's the engine, the mind is the driver, and we really focused on the engine for the first 40 years. And this is a shift for us to start focusing on how do we make the driver sharper, clearer, more effective.
How do we make your mind sharper, more clear, and effective by the footwear you wear? That's a fair thing to try to attempt. I think it's a really cool idea. It's a big thing to tackle.
Nike Mind taps into priming yourself for an activity and also recovering after an intense activity.
Ooh, priming you for activity and recovering. Let's see how they make those claims.
The Mind One is about simplicity and ease of use.
Wait, where's the claim? How do they do that? You know, so they're saying like, we wanted to make this, we wanted to do this, but they're not saying, then we did it. You know, they're not saying, and so we came up with this and it worked, right? Like we haven't heard anything from that yet. How do they do it?
The Mind One is about simplicity.
They skipped straight to saying it's simple. They skipped over how they're gonna try to do it, what they're trying to do, what does that even mean? How are they gonna try to approach it? They just went to simplicity. What?
Ease of use. The Mind Two is a little more versatile, everyday performance.
Fair.
Both are meant to create deeper awareness for athletes to help bring their focus into the moment.
Okay, so we got claims. They're trying to make a product that gets them into the present moment. But how, right? Like, where's the how? Where's the why? Where's the attempt?
And so when we designed these nodes, we were very intentional about making sure they were able to translate the information. You can't test something
Translate the information. What are we talking about? You can't test something like this on a robot, he says.
on a robot. It's always the athlete that's going to give you the feedback.
Okay.
Everything we do has to work for athletes.
You see what I mean? That's like they say something and then they take a hard left turn and just completely avoid the rest of the conversation. So, but now this is the interesting
About
part.
making sure they were able to translate the information. You can't test something like this on a robot. It's always the athlete that's
really what they're doing. That's what these maps are. You know, this pressure map.
feedback. Everything we do has to work for athletes.
Okay. Putting scientific brain scans on them, pressure sensitive, I'm assuming some sort of fancy treadmill.
We used everything. We used underfoot plantar pressure sensors. We used electromyography of the lower limbs. We did human EEG. We looked at their brains before, during, and after, and we saw differences in the brain activation and the oscillation patterns of the brain that were due to the sensory system wearing this shoe.
Okay, so that's the first like half decent claim they've made. They tested everything, and what they had this person hooked up to every possible type of data.
And we saw differences in the brain activation and
they saw differences in the brain activation. It's not a claim, there's nothing there. It's a very like fluffy, no word thing. That would be no different than if you stepped on a nail and you're like, that activated my brain. It released chemicals. It's like, yeah, you stepped on a nail. They're making all these claims. We're trying to make the best shoe. It's gonna allow people to recover and we're gonna allow them to get ready for the big game. We're trying to connect the mind to the body. And then all they do is put a bunch of sensors on people. There's a huge disconnect between those two. It's as wide as the Grand Canyon. If you really look at it for what they're actually saying, and keep in mind, these are like the higher ups. They've skipped over the entire aspect of what they were setting up.
oscillation patterns of the brain that were due to the sensory system wearing this shoe.
So it's because of
My
the shoe,
science
right?
team guided us in where the sensation should be experienced, and then we overlaid that with our engineering practices to understand how we build it.
See, like even that sentence, listen to that sentence. The mind science team guided us in where the sensation should be experienced. What does that even mean? Like what part of the foot you want to be pushing up to? But why? What is the context of that? What does that matter? Is there some sort of reflexology BS going on? Is it like why? Where's the context?
Guided us in where the sensation should be experienced, and then we overlaid that with our engineering practices to understand how we build it.
Fair.
Being able to manufacture products where you could have floating independent nodes on the bottom of the surface that can actually compress, rotate, and translate sensory information from the ground to the foot has been a labor of love and a creative endeavor for the last several years.
It is a cool concept. It's cool.
I believe this is a new frontier and a new paradigm of performance.
Whoa, that is a claim, right?
I believe this is a new frontier.
I believe this is a new frontier and new paradigm of performance. Okay, but how? What does it do? Why does it work? What else is about it, right? Let's see what they say.
And a new paradigm of performance. We're just scratching the surface.
I can't predict what that will look or feel like, but I'm really excited to go there and start thinking about how do we just reshape the future of what it means to be an athlete.
So you got all these people with PhDs sitting down and telling you, hey, we're trying to change the world. We're changing footwear. We're gonna make your pregame better and your postgame better. We are designing something that's gonna change your life. And then before they even make the claims, they cut to, it's really simple. It's this. It connects your mind to your body by its sensory input, and completely circumventing the entire aspect of the claim. And so as an average person that maybe doesn't know the scientific method, doesn't really understand how all this works and how corporations skirt around claims, you might be fooled by it. They didn't once in that entire video back up any of their attempts or their claims of what they were attempting to try to do. They just were spitting marketing BS the entire time. And I searched through all their website stuff. I looked for everything. Where's the data? To me, this comes off like these higher ups are being intentionally misleading. Maybe they sat down in the interview and they actually did explain it, but then the marketing department maybe just just chopped it all out. But why? Why would they do that? Because you can't make money off of false claims. It's called false advertising. These guys are PhDs. This is Nike, one of the biggest companies in the entire world. So they know exactly what false advertising is. So what is it? Well, false advertising is the act of publishing, transmitting, or also distributing or otherwise publicly circulating an advertisement containing a false claim or a statement made intentionally or recklessly to promote the sale of property, goods, or service. A false advertisement can be classified as deceptive if the advertiser deliberately misleads the consumer rather than making an unintentional mistake. So that's why they're skirting around it. That's why it feels, once you're actually looking at it, it feels like they're jumping from, we're trying to do this, to a completely different conversation. They'll set up a claim, they'll set up an attempt, but they never follow through because they can't false advertise it. They would get eaten alive if they actually made some strong, concrete claims. And so that's why, in my opinion, why there's absolutely no data to be found anywhere. Because if there was data, you could essentially run it through the peer review process in like a very short way where people can download the data and be like, hey, this is not what you're claiming it is. And so they have to back off on the claims and just make the most broad general claims that would be no different than if you were wearing a pair of Clomps around. If you don't know what a pair of Clomps are, it's an exclusive brand that you only see on April 1st. But the point is, if you compare like a big squishy shoe to a pair of Clomps, yeah, you're gonna have a different input in your brain. It's gonna feel differently. So that's why there's no concrete claims, because they could be sued. So to me, it seems like if you can't talk honestly and openly, and all the PhDs and vice presidents, directors have to toe a very strict line, that's because you've made a product that is borderline false advertising. That's why you see the same 5 claims over and over and over, because the Nike legal department probably worked with them. It's like, we can't claim any of this. We can only claim that it's a mind-altering shoe. Activate your senses to enhance your pregame routine. What does that even mean? How do you enhance your pregame routine? By activating your senses? Like, was that the same thing as like we talked in the last video, by having a tight bracelet, by having a ring around your finger? It's the same concept. Engage your senses. So it's all very like fundamental biology. When something happens to a part of your body, your brain registers it. And they've just taken that concept and twisted it 1,000 different ways to make it seem like they have all this science and all these people and all this money's gone into it. And so to take it even further, if you're not familiar with the scientific method, let's just look it up real quick. Keep in mind, these guys are like, they got PhDs. They learned the scientific method in 5th grade. And if you're gonna put your name on a piece of content, if you're gonna be a higher up in Nike and you're gonna claim all these things, then you're not even backing up any of your claims, you're not following the scientific method, and you're literally pulling the wool over your consumers' eyes, that's embarrassing. You're the higher ups, it's not a bunch of like interns. Okay, the scientific method in literally 6 little bullets: observation, question, hypothesis, experiment, conclusion, results. What is the observation? The observation is that when your body receives a stimulus, it distracts your brain, and your brain starts just thinking about it. Is that the claim they're making? If you look at the last sentence, while large outsole nodes push against your foot, engaging sensory areas of the brain to help you stay present and connected with your surroundings. They probably observed that when you engage sensory areas of the brain, it helps you stay present and connected because your brain's distracted. So that's the observation, right? Then what is the question? That's where it ends. They didn't even pose a question. It's just an observation. That's why that video feels so weird. They don't even make it a part 2 of the scientific method. They're not even saying that these unique placements stimulate a certain part of your brain. So that's why it feels so disjointed. This is elementary scientific method, and they only made it to step 1 and 2. Is there even any hypotheses in this at all? It works by engaging the sensory areas of your brain via thousands of mechanoreceptors underfoot. Okay, that's kind of a claim, right? But no, that's a scientific fact that's already been observed. That's not a hypothesis. And these guys have to know that they're being misleading. They are not that dumb that they don't understand the missing steps in their logic and the missing steps in the scientific method. I haven't taken a science class in like 15 years and I still remember all that. I still know how the scientific method works. So if you have a PhD and you're in the higher ups of Nikes, you have to know. There's no way they don't know. And keep in mind, I'm not a scientist. I don't have a PhD. I talk about boots and shoes on the internet and make leather goods. This is my very novice understanding of how you could actually make this follow the scientific method. The observation is when you get a sensory input, it distracts your brain, I think is as a fair like observation. So then the question is, can you activate certain parts of your nervous system throughout your body to distract your brain enough to have what? Well, let's go back to their claims. They say to enhance your pregame and postgame routines. That's a pretty loose question. You know, it doesn't really work. The better question would be, does this unique setup and placement of these nodes and the amount of pressure activate your brain in a significant enough way above and beyond other footwear that you can find a gap in that data to point to the fact that this is actually going to enhance your pre and post game routines? But that's just the question. So we're already deeper than what Nike got. But then you get to the hypothesis, and this is where it really falls apart because it's really hard to claim and make a hypothesis when there's no data, when it's a very general and broad statement. And so the hypothesis would probably be something around the lines of like, by having pressure on the bottom of your foot, it drops your heart rate, it drops your EKG scores, it activates neural pathways, it increases your VO2 max. There's actual data that you would want to put into this hypothesis, and then you wouldn't just see like, all right, well, this is the data from when they wore this. You'd want to control to have a baseline of information. So you'd do it with a regular shoe that doesn't push up into your feet. But even that, it doesn't go far enough to really prove anything. And that's why the next step is experiment. You have to do it over and over and over. Try it with clumps, try it with sandals, try it with barefoot shoes, try it with these, try them with logging boots. You want to have enough data so you can eliminate all the variables and split that data to show this hypothesis was proven through this experiments to come to the conclusion that when you have this amount of pressure on these spots on the bottom of the foot, it raises or lowers this stat, or in-game testing, it does this, but there's no data to back it up. And that's why you can never even get to the results, because we didn't even get past step 2, let alone to any results backed up by any data. And you can't tell me that Nike doesn't know how that works. I just sat down and just BS'd my way through that. I didn't plan out how I would test it. That was just like me sitting down and trying to remember how science works from my science classes in college and try to figure out how I would prove that one of my products is actually backed by science. But that's the crux of it. It's not backed by science, but they're still acting and showing you everything as if it were backed by science. When in all reality, if you just take a 5th grader's approach to looking at the shoe, there's no science whatsoever. And their department's literally called Mind Science Department. What the? It's so bad. But that's why they're playing this game where they're very, very tight on what they can say and they don't make any claims, they don't even pose any questions, because this is so far removed from any real science that if they flirted with the line of science, they could immediately be sued. So if they did run all those tests, where's the data? Why don't they release it? Why don't they publish a paper to prove that their product works, instead of playing this game of like implying that it works, playing with the wording to make sure that they're legally protected and making you think it does something for you, when in all reality, they're just taking your money. But maybe there's some redeeming quality on the inside. So let's cut these in half, see what's on the inside, and really put the final stamp on this. Is it pseudoscience or is it not? Is there anything on the inside of this that might help this case a little bit more? Is there something hidden to save Nike from this Nike Mind pseudoscience BS? Let's find out. These are micro adjust belts, handmade right here in the shop by us. Premium leather, solid brass hardware, and the rounded buckle so it doesn't dig in your gut all day. But what is micro adjust? Well, the one problem everyone always has with their belts is one hole's too tight, one's too loose. These little adjustments right here allow you to adjust your belt by 1/2 inch increments so it fits you exactly how you want for the lifetime of the belt. So check them out below. Okay, we got it cut in half. And if you're not subscribed, consider pushing that subscribe button, because we are the ones keeping these brands accountable as much as we can. You know, a lot of the other people reviewing these, you know, they've had some critiques, but we go hard on these brands and we try our best to make sure that you as consumers know what you're actually buying. Is it science or is it just marketing? The only way we do this is with your guys' support, so check out our handmade leather goods, check out our collaborations, check out our new insoles we dropped, saddle sole insoles. Those things have been flying off the shelves. They're gonna be sold out in like 20 or 30 days. So if you want a pair, get them now, because it's gonna be a few months before we get the second batch. So now, let's see what's inside. So is there anything on the inside that's different? No, it's basically the same thing. There's really not much difference at all. From the insole down, it's basically the same. Little differences in hardness of the foams, you know, different structure, but for the most part, the concept and the application is the exact same through and through. This is definitely more shoe oriented because of the harder foam. It's got a little bit more durability. They definitely didn't just make this upper into a sneaker upper and call it good. It is a different design, so you gotta give it up to that. So why are they running all these tests and why are they doing all this scientific stuff if they weren't actually gonna publish anything or show you the results? Well, it's not science. That's marketing, baby. Because if they did have results significant enough to make any real claims, they would 100% make those claims. But above that, they would have trademarks, they would have patents, they would do everything in Nike's power to protect that innovation that they said was industry change or whatever those claims were at the very end of that video. You would be able to prove through legal means that it is innovative. And they have in the past. Look at the Air Unit. The Air Unit alone has changed the entire footwear industry and made Nike who they were. That little innovation of Air Units was worth billions of dollars. And so if you came up with a technology that's that innovative and that game-changing, backed by science, you would protect it like no other thing you protect. So honestly, Nike ultimately just exposed themselves. Unless they have some data hidden somewhere that they want to release to the public to show that they're not just leading their consumers astray, but based on their very safe legal wording of all the points, Nike to me is intentionally misleading their customers, but just not to a point where they can actually get in any kind of legal trouble, or that you can actually call it false advertising, or where you can actually call it pseudoscience. It toes that line perfectly. But why is that bad as a consumer? Like there's gonna be some people like, they're shoes, dude, like just relax. Like, yeah, they're a little bit exaggerating on their marketing, but like they're cool shoes. Well, it's like to you, but maybe like if the higher ups in Nike don't understand the scientific method, how are they ever gonna assume the average consumer knows that they're just teasing about the science? It's not really, we're not real science, it's marketing. A lot of people actually assume it's real science and they're gonna buy the product accordingly. And as a consumer, if you fall for false advertising, you can get hurt. It's unethical. You lose trust in the brand. It's a waste of money. It's literally illegal to make false claims. And so if you're the type of person that's defending Nike on this, I kind of get it. And even if you don't care, it's just shoes. I just don't care. There's $150, I don't care. But the problem is it's not just in the footwear industry that's plagued with pseudoscience and false advertising. It's anywhere from cars to literally houses to small goods to every aspect of any product. There's always a chance of false advertising. And if you don't know what you're looking for, and if you don't know how to feel out like, they're making light claims, but they're not backing it up. If you don't know what that is, you can fall to not just a $150 mistake, but it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's why false advertising laws are so important. Because if you can recognize the pattern in this, then you can recognize that pattern anywhere else. And that's why I really wanted to take the time to break this down so that you can remember next time you see this and you feel a little bit like, it seems like they're making some scientific claims that don't seem to be backed up by anything. Your little spidey senses will hopefully go off. Before I buy this, let me look at this, because it is so much more rampant than anyone knows. It's all over the place. And a lot of times it's because they have somewhat good intentions. They're trying to toe that line perfectly. And a lot of times they just cross the line. And that's why it's so embarrassing to me for Nike, especially if I was one of those dudes with a PhD and they put that video out. I'd be like, you guys are ruining my reputation. This isn't just about the brand, which is just wild to me in general, because Nike, who they always claim to be this like righteous company with all these initiatives, and they really want honesty and truth and transparency through all these things. And unfortunately, in 2026, with AI skewing the truth like nobody's ever seen, with trust in science completely collapsing after the 2020 thing, I don't even know if I can say the word still, trust has slowly been eroding under the institution that people have trusted for years and years. But in all reality, they're using the trust of those higher ups and making them hop on camera and shading their products with a lot of fake science, with a lot of pseudoscience, with a lot of leading things that aren't grounded in any reality. And they wonder why nobody trusts Nike. They wonder why everyone's going with these small brands. And they wonder why nobody wants to pay 4 times the price for a cheap foam shoe on the resale market. So to me, this was a really interesting and important video to do. So support this wherever you can. If you made it through the whole video, shout out, because it's probably a long video. And thank you guys for your support, because nobody else is holding Nike accountable like we do and holding their feet to the fire. And I'm not opposed to being wrong. If Nike comes out and is like, you're wrong, here's all the data, here's all the information, that's what we want. That's the goal of this style of like holding brands accountable. It's not to burn brands down, it's to hold brands accountable, to be the brands that we all know and love. And consumers want to trust the companies. They want to invest in the companies they've known for years, that they love for years. But when brands over and over and over betray the trust of their consumers, that's how people lose trust in institutions, and especially brands. So Nike, get your together. That is embarrassing. And if I was one of those guys on camera, I would do everything in my power to get those videos removed, because it is embarrassing, especially with my name and my PhD and my title on there, all claiming borderline pseudoscience BS. So let me know what you guys think. Maybe I'm a little bit off on this. Prove me wrong. Let me know what you guys think. See ya.